Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer, and today we are continuing in our video series discussing the Fair Housing Act. Today we're going to talk about advertising. You're the listing broker, you're advertising seller's property. What's critical to remember is that you market the property features and not who you think should live there. You describe the property and the characteristics of the property, but you leave alone your notions of who should purchase that property, or with respect to rental properties, who should rent or lease that property. It is unlawful to advertise any preference that discriminates against or discourages members of any of the protected classes. Remember, we discussed the identity of the protected classes in the last video. It is, however, lawful to advertise in such a way that attracts or includes families or people with disabilities. We're going to play a game called Which is Okay? And you'll see on our screen two different advertising phrases. I'm going to read the phrases to you, pause, let you think about it, and then I'll give you the answer to the question. So here's the first slide. Which is okay? Condo unit features state-of-the-art internet access and other high-tech features. Or should you say, this condo unit is perfect for mature adults? The answer, of course, is the first statement. The condo unit features state-of-the-art internet access and other high-tech features. The listing broker might be thinking in their own mind, gosh, a condo unit that's this sophisticated, nobody would want little kids to live in it. They might mess up the stuff. Well, if that's what listing broker's thinking, listing broker's going to have to keep that contained within their own brain because it has no place in advertising for real property. All that the listing agent should do is project the best features of the property to all potential consumers and then let the consumer decide whether or not they want that property. There is nothing about any advertising for real property that should solicit the particular buyer that the listing broker thinks should want to purchase this property. So the second statement, condo units perfect for mature adults, never in a million years would you use that phrase. Okay? Next set of slogans. Would you say, this home is located in a Spanish-speaking neighborhood? Or would you simply print the advertising in Spanish? There's absolutely no reason why marketing materials should not be printed in a language that the listing broker believes is designed to attract potential buyers to that property. And if advertising printed in Spanish is most likely to reach potential buyers for the property, then by all means, print advertising in Spanish. But again, never would a listing broker include in their advertising a statement that says a home is located in a Spanish-speaking neighborhood. That statement would be clearly designed to steer Spanish-speaking people to that neighborhood and to distract non-Spanish-speaking people from that neighborhood. That would be a violation of the Fair Housing Act. Okay, next set of slogans. This property includes a separate apartment. Or, separate apartment on site provides an excellent home for your mother-in-law. The answer, of course, is not the second slogan. Listing brokers should not market property seeking the buyer or any resident in particular for the property. And to market property seeking the mother-in-law of a buyer to occupy the apartment would be wrongful. The simple fact is the property includes an apartment building, and the buyer's mother-in-law or adult child or brother or tenant Anybody that the buyer believes is appropriate to occupy that apartment can occupy the apartment. It's not up to the listing broker to designate who the ideal tenant or the ideal occupant for that apartment building would be. Which is okay. You're at an open house and a family comes through. You say to the family, families are welcome in this neighborhood. There is a playground here in the neighborhood. Or would you say, you might want to consider a house in the neighborhood next door. It has a wonderful playground. This one is a little bit trickier because in both cases, we're orienting our comments towards the fact that this buyer is a family. And we have been talking so far today about the fact that we don't want to target our advertising towards any kind of characteristic associated with the buyer personally. Except remember what I said originally. It's okay for your advertising to attract families and folks with disabilities. And so the advertising that says families are welcome, there's a playground in the neighborhood, that's fine. Use that advertising. Use that in print. Use that as an oral statement when a buyer walks in the door at your open house. The second statement, although it could be directing somebody to the very house that's advertised by saying families are welcome, there's a playground in the neighborhood, the second statement is intended to thwart the buyer's interest in the property that they're viewing. Can't do that. We can't steer a buyer from the house they're viewing to the house that we think would be more appropriate for them. So the first statement is the only acceptable statement on this slide. Okay, one more slide. In print advertising again, we say, this condo has no wheelchair ramp and is not accessible to people with disabilities. Or, this condo includes a wheelchair ramp and is accessible to people with disabilities. This is similar to the last slide. The two categories of protected classes that can be advertised to attract are families and folks with disabilities. Maybe the CC&Rs on this condo building say that the buyer's not allowed to modify the exterior of the unit. And so we want to include the first print advertising that says there is no wheelchair ramp and it's not accessible to people with disabilities because if you come, we're going to have a fight on our hands about whether or not you can install a wheelchair ramp because you're not allowed to make modifications to the exterior of the unit. Well, on a future video, we're going to talk about CC&Rs that violate the Fair Housing Act. And those CC&Rs, while they might not violate the Fair Housing Act, would certainly have to be modified to accommodate a person with a disability. And so it would be inappropriate to use that first statement. But it is wholly appropriate to say, this condo includes a wheelchair ramp and is accessible for people with disabilities, because we are not denying anybody's interest in the property. Rather, we're attracting the interest of everybody, including folks with disabilities. Thanks for sticking with me. I know this was a long slide. We covered a lot of material. Advertising is a huge component of the Fair Housing Act. There is much scrutiny paid to the advertising by brokers for real property, whether it's for rent or for sale. And brokers and DBs, you need to have a policy within your firm by which all advertising is verified to be fair housing compliant before a lot of expense is put into producing the marketing material and publishing the marketing material. DBs, I can't encourage you enough to have an office policy requiring first compliance with the Fair Housing Act, and as you deem necessary, review of all advertising to ensure compliance. Thanks for tuning in. There will be additional videos in this series on the Fair Housing Act. In the meantime, feel free to send your questions to me, legal hotline at warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.